deeper learning opportunities. I'm Melanie Casabar with McGraw-Hill Education, and I will be your moderator today. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few quick housekeeping items. This webinar is being presented in listen-only mode, which means that you can hear the presenters, but they won't be able to hear you. But we, of course, invite your participation by sharing any questions you may have, and you can type these in the chat box located at the bottom of your toolbar on the right of your screen. So let's get started with our webinar. Joining us today is Dr. Ashley Gess, Assistant Professor at Virginia Western Community College in Roanoke, Virginia. Dr. Gess has been a scientist and educator for 21 years, teaching chemistry and biology at both the high school and higher education levels, in which her classes are characterized by dynamic, carefully designed lectures, projects, and laboratories to promote content retention and active learning. Dr. Gess publishes and regularly speaks on STEM education and the effective incorporation of technology in the K-16 science classroom. Welcome, Ashley.
Hi, it's good to see everyone.
But before we turn it over to Ashley, I'd also like to introduce Jason Marshall, who is a Senior National Consultant with McGraw-Hill Education, and he's going to first provide us with a brief overview of the data-rich adaptive technology called LearnSmart. Take it away, Jason.
Okay. Are you going to turn your screen over to me, Melanie?
Yep. You're all good to go.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. This is LearnSmart, and we're McGraw-Hill Education. LearnSmart is an adaptive and prescriptive study tool for your students. So the way I like to package it or have you think about it is this. Remember back when you were in college and you were studying for one of those high-stakes exams, a semester or a yearly exam, what would you probably do? Typically got together with your friends or your study buddies. You'd get together in a room. You often made cards and had a concept on one side of the card and maybe the definition or the thing that was to be remembered on the other side of the card, and you'd quiz each other. And you'd have a stack of those concepts that you had mastered, and you had a stack of those concepts that you hadn't quite mastered, and then you had a stack of those concepts that you absolutely could not remember when asked to do so. And that's kind of what LearnSmart's baseline is. It's an adaptive and prescriptive study tool. It's available to students every single day. The nice thing about it is that it also collects data for both teachers and students moving forward and a pathway to mastery. So LearnSmart is a program that has a series of probes. It is combined with what we call is a smart book. And notice this book is a middle school book. LearnSmart is available from grades 6 all the way up through college titles. And notice in this middle school book, you have some highlighting that takes place. Well, LearnSmart and SmartBook highlights the text for the students. It will start highlighting in yellow that content which is most important to master, the essential concepts of that page. Eventually, it will turn green. The green is content that the student has demonstrated mastery of. So how does LearnSmart know what a student has mastered and has not mastered? Well, this text continuously evolves, as you can see here in a college textbook, being yellow and green, that which is most important to understand and that which is mastered. And it learns that sort of information from a series of probes. These probes are questions that are designed to uncover what students know and what they don't know. And it continuously evolves as a book to make sure students are focused on that content which is most essential. So let's take a look at it live. How do we get to LearnSmart? Well, I'm in our 6 through 12 platform. Our 6 through 12 platform is called ConnectEd. And I happen to be in the title for high school physical science. If you're logged in as in ConnectEd and go to any one of the titles that you're most interested in, you'll find LearnSmart in a couple places. If I go to this little drop-down menu, which is called a breadcrumbs menu, and I open it up, notice that I have a place up here called Program Resources. When I click on Program Resources, and click on Program Resources to the right, LearnSmart icon will appear here. There's a second place you could find LearnSmart, and that's to go up to this hamburger menu icon. When I click on it, I could go to my digital resources, the box of resources, and again, when I'm in Program Resources, I'm going to see the LearnSmart icon right here. When you launch it, and I happen to have it launched already, you're going to see a screen that looks like this. Now this is just an instructor screen. The students will never see this screen. But you can, as an instructor, first thing, try it as a student. You can edit your class roster. Not have on my screen, I have my chapters, and over here I will have the start date and the end date perhaps, and I'll have different modules that I could choose to assign to my students. Now in any one of those modules, I have the elapsed time that the program is supposed to take, and I also have the start and the end date, and whether I want to make a shallow dive or a deep dive. Now when I'm done with that, I can go in and see what the students might see and show the student experience. So when the student goes in, they will have their table of contents view, those modules that are available for that course and which ones their instructor had assigned to them. And mine is loading here. Give it just a moment here. Give it just a moment to load here. What you see on the screen are the chapters of the textbook. So the first title of the chapter is The Nature of Science, followed by motion, and then all of the chapters found in my course. Boy, I seem to have locked down here. I'm going to have to pull out of here and try this again. Give me just a moment, and I will go in from the very beginning. I'm going to go forget the exact web address for ConnectEd. You can type in appears. I'm going to enter, which was, remember, I showed this first, how to enter LearnSmart. I happen to be in Program Resources. And now I can launch LearnSmart. LearnSmart will launch. And we will be in the screen that is the instructor-only screen. And we'll take a moment or two to load. Now, what I failed to mention earlier, these are the sections. So these might be your period 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And when I go back to assign, I had meant to show you a few things that had locked me out of. There we go. Now we have a full view. For some reason, I was locked out the first time. I've got my titles here, and I can also choose to customize any one of these modules. So right now, my students are seeing all of the chapters and all of the modules in LearnSmart. I have the available date and the due date that I want these modules completed by, and the estimated time taken for any one of these modules. Well, in any one of these modules, I could choose to customize the experience for the students. So if I go into Motion and click Customize, here we see the lessons within that chapter. So a chapter in my book is called Motion, and it looks like I have 5 lessons within that chapter. And right now we have it set for a deep dive. At any time, I could choose to exclude certain lessons within that module. So I'm going to exclude describing motion. And guess what? We've already gone through speed, so don't need to go over that any longer. So I'm going to exclude those. Down here at the bottom, it says the number of learning items that I have in these particular modules. Well, the learning items aren't the number of questions that are in LearnSmart. The learning items are the number of topics. LearnSmart in any given chapter might have, let's say 50 learning items. But in those learning items, each one of those learning items might have anywhere between 3 and 6 questions that are supportive of them. We want to continually recycle LearnSmart questions, ask it a different way. Maybe the first time it's a multiple choice question, next it's a check all that apply, next it's students actually generating an answer. So in this case where we have, let's say, 38 learning modules present, there may be almost 200 specific questions to cover that topic. So once we're done assigning the topics in the way that we want to assign them, I can go to my Study the Content screen. And when I go to Study Content, here we're back at the screen that has all the chapters in our book. And I could choose to go into any one of these titles or subjects. So I'm going to choose, how about something pretty simple, The Nature of Science. Every chemistry book in middle school and high school tends to start with something like this. And in many cases, it's a review of what's been taught before or basic science concepts. Now on the left-hand side, at any time I could go back to that table of contents view and go back to any other chapter that I want to study on. But I have 4 main categories right here. I have Preview, I have Read, I have Practice, and Recharge. Let's take a look at preview first. When I click on the preview phase, essentially what I'm going to get is a lay of the land. It's an ability to skim the chapter and see what's going to be in it. So over here on the left-hand side, I have the chapter opener. It's 2 pages long. And each one of these chapter headings is a lesson. So I can see in lesson 1, the methods of science. Looks like it's going to be about 8 pages long. Standards of measurement looks about 7 pages long, 5 pages long. And if I go through viewing this chapter, notice that the text is sort of dulled and muted. Well, in the preview section, we're not really reading it yet. We're skimming over the main titles. We're seeing what's going to be a part of this lesson and what is to come, the things that we're going to be asked to learn about. Previewing chapters is a Project Chris strategy. You'll see this suggestions and strategies, and it's just getting a lay of the land. So with Learn Smart, I like to say with Learn Smart, you're reading smart, you're studying smart, and you're learning smart, starting with the preview phase. So I've previewed this chapter, and I kind of have an idea of what's to come. Eventually, it's going to ask that I read this chapter. So let's go into the read title. And I do that by clicking on the bottom left. When I click on the icon on the bottom left, notice I have text that is highlighted. Learn Smart is going to highlight that text which is most important, the concepts that have to be mastered in this chapter. And nothing is green yet, so it doesn't look like I've mastered a whole lot in this chapter. And I'm pretty far along. I'm already on page 10, and of course I can make this page as large or as small as I'd like. Eventually I'm going to have to practice what I've learned. Part of the program comes into play. I'm going to go to the practice screen. And when I click on practice, I'm asked some questions, a series of probes. And it is these probes that determine what students know, what they don't know. So notice at the bottom it's asking me my confidence level on whether I know this question or not. I have no idea, I'm unsure, I think so, or I absolutely know it. Learn Smart is determining 4 different pieces of information at each one of these probes. The first data point is whether I got the answer right or wrong. And we're about to see if I'm going to be able to do that. The second data point is how confident I was as to whether I was going to get this answer right or wrong. The third data point is how much time it's taken to determine how confident I am. Learn Smart is tracking that. And then the third piece are some memory decay algorithms. Learn Smart determines from this information when you're most likely to forget the content, and then ends up recycling it at the point where it needs to be recycled and relearned. So here we have a question, and it's actually asking us to generate an answer. A blank theory is an explanation of things or events based on knowledge gained from many observations and investigations. Now, if the student isn't exactly sure of the answers, they do have the ability to go back in their book. They don't have to reach for a book. They don't have to pull one off the shelf. They have the ability to find one here. So if I saw that correctly, and I say I am unsure, looks like I got that almost correct. So if an answer is asked to be generated and a student, let's say, gets it almost correct, or even more importantly, is they misspell it slightly incorrect, Learn Smart will determine that the student knows that answer, they just misspelled it. So we had an answer being generated at that point. Here we have a multiple choice. Science can explain many things about the natural world. Click the answer you think is right. I'm going to say I know this answer. And I'm going to just randomly give up an answer here, or generate an answer. And I'm going to continue. Well, as we go through here and answer questions and also answer confidence levels, notice that eventually a coach will come up.
Read a little bit more at this point. If you agree, please click Read and return to the book.
So you have a coach. The coach was determining that, you know what, I wasn't doing very well. So maybe I need to go back to my read section and read a little bit more about this. There's a coach feature that comes into Learn Smart.
It looks like you need to read a little bit more.
And she can be turned on or off at a student's discretion. But when you're started with Learn Smart, she's a great guide to walk you through the program or an evaluation of Learn Smart. So it's asking me to read a little bit more, and of course it will go back to this read section to allow me to do that. At any time in the upper right, I can also see how I am performing related to my classmates. So there's a competitive element to Learn Smart. Students can see how they're performing. They can put their real name or an anonymous name, and a teacher can determine how well or how that is administered. And all along the way, LearnSmart is collecting data about how students are performing. So how is this teacher going to use that data? Well, eventually there's going to be some reports that are generated. Now, as a student, I have the ability to generate reports here as well. So we've looked at the preview phase, which is essentially a skimming of the lesson visually to see what's to come and what the lay of the land is. The second part of the program is the read phase, where students are actually reading for information, a highlighted text that has highlighted the most essential content, and then eventually to determine their mastery of it. So what kind of data can a teacher receive from LearnSmart? Well, if we go back in here, let's take a look at some of the reports. Well, here's when you're implementing an online program, one of the things teachers always ask about, how do I know if my students have been on there and how much time they've spent on it and how they're performing? Well, LearnSmart gives you that data. So if the student number one says, you know, Miss, I spent all night on LearnSmart, you could say, you sure about that, student number one? Looks like you only spent about 3 minutes on LearnSmart. And you can see their standing and how complete, how far they are along in their modules. Here's another report called the Progress Overview Report. And I kind of like this one because it's visual, and it can visually give you a lay of the land and how students are performing on each module. You can see every chapter listed at the top. And I have the time spent on each one of those modules over here to the left, or time spent total, I should say. Now, green is good. We make it a small little green dot. It means they're performing pretty well. Darker the green, the better. 100% is a really dark green. Red is not so good, so we make it larger, we make it red. And these are some areas of concern. So you can quickly and visually see how a student is performing on any one of the modules. As a teacher, and I taught middle school science, I would have loved to have known what all of my students were having difficulty with. Well, there's a missed questions teacher report. Maybe we didn't cover it. Maybe we went on to, in high school or middle school, there was an assembly that day that was unexpected, and we thought we covered it, but we didn't. The missed questions teacher report will reveal that sort of a situation. There's the most challenging learning objectives. Many of us are bound and really accountable to learning objectives, and that's how we view our program, as opposed to questions. So LearnSmart will also allow you to pull a report on that and give you those learning objectives that are most important. And then one of my favorite reports is the metacognitive skills report. Remember, LearnSmart is collecting not just whether you got the answer right or wrong, but how confident you were as to whether you got it right or wrong. So we could generate some reports like this: correct and aware. These are my students that, you know what, they got the right answer, and they were pretty confident they were going to get the right answer. They either thought they were going to get the right answer or they knew they were going to get the right answer. Second column, correct and unaware. They got it right, but you know what, they're not as confident as they need to be. We still got to worry about these just a little bit and make them more confident. Next column is incorrect and aware, and this is probably a group you don't want to be in, a column you don't want to be in. Incorrect and unaware, not the best place to be, but great data for teachers to have. And by the way, every one of these reports is mirrored in some way on the student side, so that students can see how they are performing, what their most challenging learning objectives are, and the questions they miss with the greatest frequency. So how might I implement LearnSmart into my classroom? And this is just a very short demonstration of it. Well, there's a couple models, but there's no one way to implement LearnSmart, and it's the way that works best to you that we suggest. But let me give you a few suggestions. One is the flipped model. Maybe LearnSmart is a preview of what's to come. You administer LearnSmart prior to you covering that content. In that scenario, you're getting some valuable data prior to going into the lesson. It almost becomes a diagnostic test, if you will. It also makes students a lot more successful once they're in your lesson. So they've already seen it, they've already read about it, and now you can spend more time doing more hands-on investigations and extensions. That's one model for LearnSmart. Another one is a homework model. So you cover LearnSmart in class, students go at home, maybe do some additional reading, and then take the probes to see how well they've mastered the content. And that way it's a continuous, concurrent study buddy, so that students don't get too far behind. After you've gone over it, they get to see it a different way, they get assessed on it continuously, and the data is collected by teachers. And the other one is a review model, and here it's more of an assessment tool to be used after the instruction or prior to a high-stakes assessment similar to the scenario I outlined at the beginning, What model works best for you is the one that's perfect for you, and it may be a combination of all three. The main benefit to using LearnSmart is obviously efficacy, and LearnSmart has had a lot of usage in the field over the last 5 or 6 years. So we've been able to pull a lot of data on it. As you can look at these infographics, it's a program that improves student performance, and that's really what it's all about. So in this first infographic, you can see how it's pulling students into the A category that previously have been in the B, C, and even D categories. You can see how many more students are passing with LearnSmart as opposed to without LearnSmart. And then the last infographic is the retention rate. Again, LearnSmart improving on all three of these metrics. We're McGraw-Hill Education. This is a very short introduction to LearnSmart at the high school titles. We have it from grades 6 through 12. We also have it for our AP and college titles through McGraw-Hill Education. ConnectEd is the platform for middle school and high school, and our AP platform we call Connect. Melanie?
Thank you very much, Jason. Ashley?
Thank you.
Great, thank you. See if I can, there we go. Well, again, my name is Ashley Gess, and you should be able to see my my screen right now. And what you're seeing is, remember, currently I'm teaching higher ed. I teach at a community college in Virginia, and so I am using Connect and not ConnectEd. However, you'll see a couple different differences in the nuance. What I would like to do today is speak. I have been in your shoes. I've taught high school. I'm the parent of 4 kids, currently 2 middle schoolers. So I work with the middle school teachers all the time as well. And now I teach higher ed, but I domains. So I'm intimately familiar with what you guys are going through, because guess what? I'm going through it with you. We are increasingly at the higher ed level more subject to SOLs, or learning objectives, learning outcomes, and standardized testing. Of course, at the higher ed level, we're resisting. But of course, I was teaching K-12 when we started back in the early 90s with the implementation of objectives. So I know exactly what's going on, and let me just give you a little background. When I started teaching college, especially at the community college level, we were getting students who were just simply unable to really comprehend the reading. And I started looking for a digital platform that would support what I was trying to do with my students. They were coming to me and they'd lug around this big giant book and none of them would read it. I'm seeing this in my middle schooler. I'll say to her, hey, you've got a quiz, let's get your book out. Oh, we never use that. And I'm thinking, what the heck? What is going on here? This is a fabulous resource. I'm not saying it has to be the be-all, end-all, but my gosh, it's here. And she just doesn't want to read it. I mean, she just doesn't even want to go through it. So that was what I was challenged with my own students. And so I started going actively to publishers, and I ended up with McGraw-Hill because of the reading dynamic was number one for me. I want to show you how I implement the LearnSmart/SmartBook platform in my class. Now, I'm not going to have a whole lot of time. I'm going to give you the top 3 or top 4 things that I would suggest strongly you do to get started if you choose to use the platform. It has made, and I would be willing to lay money that it would make a huge difference in the learning dynamic in your classroom if you set it up in this way. Okay, so here what we have, you can see I teach anatomy and physiology, and I teach biology. I also teach microbiology sometimes. I'm going to simply show you, I have several different courses. I'm going to pick up my current course, Bio 101, Fall 15. I actually teach an on the way Connect. Now, this is not ConnectEd, it's Connect will appear. Okay, and what you can do, and you have the same capability as I do, is to organize week 1 for the students to week 2. Here we go again. Here we have some more Learn Smart assignments for the students to utilize. Now there are many other kinds of assignments for ConnectEd platform Learn Smart today, but certainly if you're interested in a deeper look at Connect or ConnectEd, just let your rep know or let Melanie know who put this webinar together, and certainly I can help you. I'm give you some more information. Okay, so how do I assign Connect? This is my hint number piece that is, we do have the top echelon of students, but most of these students are resistant. So as you notice, if you look in chapter 1 here, I've got 2 chapter 1s assigned. Notice the dates, 8/32 due at the end of the week on 9/6. Now why am I doing this? Well, I assign chunks of a chapter at a time. What I like to do is have the students come to me with you imagine looking at your classroom, talking about a concept and them going, oh yeah, I read about that. I mean, the first time I heard this, I about fell over because I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? I don't have to give them all the rote information. And it was such a freeing feeling for me as a teacher because I could say, well, yeah, now let's talk about that. Let's talk about that deeper. Learn Smart is a technology designed to help the students read the text, get the basics out of what they should get to, something in their head, so you can do your job as a teacher and get them deeper into the material. Okay, so let me show you how I would assign the Learn Smart. You're going to click Add Assignment, and I'm assuming it's a ConnectEd platform. You're going to select Learn Smart. And then here are my modules, just like you saw your chapters. These are the same things. And, I'm going to go to a chapter that's not in my current semester. What happens? When I go into the assignment, I get an option. Now again, this was very similar to what you were looking at. I get a choice of what topics to include, and I want less content, and learning items covered 90. Okay, here's my philosophy. I select a portion only. Assign it about 48 hours before I see the student, or 24 hours before I see the student. So that means that I would expect the passive diffusion and facilitated diffusion, transport mechanisms, and osmosis enhanced by aquaporins to be something I would be discussing in class the day this is due. Okay? Notice it's only asking the student to spend 14 minutes on average to learn maximum amount about these topics. If I didn't even want them to spend 14 minutes, I can move my slider down. It's not too much. All right, then so then you just go through, you decide how much the assignment average, assign 10 points and then give it an overall 10%. And I hit assign. And then what happens, hold on, I want it to be available Sunday, and I have them available at midnight that day. And then the day it's due. So if I'm going to be talking about it on Tuesday, I would class. It's at 11. It meets at 11. You can assign it. Whoops. Whoops. Start date should be after current date and time. Let's see, 5 o'clock. There we go. It's not letting me assign it. There we go. Okay. Oh, 5 o'clock a.m. There we go. See, now is when I wish you guys could prompt me. There we go. Okay. All right, now here's another key. We all know, those of us who are here it's going to pop up. I use Blackboard as a learning management tool. I don't know if some of you do. Some of our high schools do, or Moodle. In Blackboard, this is a seamless connect, and so okay, a key for Connect. Let me go back to my Connect site. This is my A key to studying any STEM subject, science, math, engineering, or technology, is what? Is that you do it regularly, showing you real, and have it due Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Or assign it Monday, do Tuesday. Assign it Wednesday, do Thursday. Assign it Friday, do Sunday. By planning it out that way and structuring your chapters, the students learn the necessity to interact with the material on a regular and consistent basis. And this way, they don't try to cram it all in the end, which I can't stand, and I know you can't either, because it's so non-productive. So it's up to us to show them that structure. And by chunking it out the way I've shown you, for example, here again, Chapter 1, assigned Monday, assigned Thursday, due Sunday. Always Monday and Thursday in this class. Okay, that's best practice 1. Chunk out your material, keep it regularly and consistently assigned. Again, students will resist it, but if you're only assigning 14 minutes to 20 minutes a pop, it is not unheard of, and it's very productive time. Okay, best practice number 2, use the reports. Now, I'm going to show you some of the reports that I can get here, the ones that I like the most. Okay, so I'm going to go to my reports here. Well, it's going to take a second. Okay, my favorite report to use, top report, are the top 5 learning objectives that students don't get when they do the pre-work the day before. So imagine this. Your class has done the pre-work. You've assigned it on Monday. It's due Tuesday before they come to lecture or before they come to class. Their class is at 11 o'clock. You go in and at 10:30 or early that morning, you pull down the top 5 learning objectives that the students struggled with. Can you imagine the power you have now? No longer are going to go in and these data tell you what they've learned. So you're going to go down and pull down the report, look at the top 5 learning objectives, and instantly what I do is I take those learning objectives, my sponge activity, or my bell work. I instantly put up these 5 learning objectives. I divide the class up into 5, and I have them delve into that learning objective, come up with, let's say, maybe the top 3 things to know about that learning objective, and the course. The great thing of these are data-driven decisions. I know what my students are learning and not learning really before they even know. All right, for some reason it's not. Let me go back to my home page. Here we go. And let me try and get. Okay. Doesn't seem to be waiting on this. Okay, I'm going to log out and log back in again. Just, I don't know what's happened to my, I seem to be limited by my connection here. I'm sorry, guys. Let me get up. I'll give you my best practice 3. So best practice 1 is chunk your information, do it in regular and consistent intervals. Best practice 2, use the reports, especially the learning objectives report, which I'm hopefully going to pull up for you right now. Okay, best practice 3 is to use the metacognitive report to anything at this point. My McGraw-Hill click link. That's the report where it tells you, does the student know what they're talking about? Do they think they know what they're talking about? Do they really have no clue what they're talking about and just completely guessing all the time? Okay, here's what I do with that report. I look at it, but I also have regular and consistent meetings with the students, and I have them pull down their own report. So if they get their metacognitive report and then we talk about it, I say to them, what is this telling you? What do you think about this? Now, part of my research, please understand, is what retains people in sciences, math, engineering, the STEM subjects. And what we find vastly are that girls end up somewhere in the middle. They usually know what they're talking about, but they're so unsure of themselves, they're constantly second guessing. I hear this all the time. The girls will come up to me, I'm just not a good test taker. I second guess myself. Whereas the boys are always positive they know, or they're completely clueless. Does this sound like something in your class? Well, it happens in my class all the time. I love to be able to go to my students and talk to them on that level and say to them, hey, tell me about why you're hesitant to answer these questions. Let's talk about that. Let's hear how you're doing. If I have a student who's really hesitant like that, I can now, it's like a window into them. I can pair them up with somebody who is appropriate, who's opposite to them, or who is the same as them, and really speak to where they are metacognitively and boost their confidence in their own ability. And the really cool thing is, especially those students that lie in those middle two, they really respond to the program. Because why? Because it gives them a platform in which to regularly and consistently practice, and all of a sudden, you'll see it in their eyes. They'll be talking, and they'll know the answer. They'll recognize what you're saying. That is something you get addicted to. It's awesome to watch in action. Okay, so those are my top three suggestions. Number one, chunking and regular and consistent assignments. Number two, best practice number two, use the 5 learning objectives most commonly missed in your hand when you walk into class. Use it as your sponge activity or your bell work. Best practice number 3, use the metacognitive report. Have the student download it themselves, bring it, talk about it with them. Okay, last one, number 4, and then I'm going to hush. Use the refresh option. Now this is I'm going to try and, okay, it's not, for some reason, I'm not able to get in McGraw, but there is a refresh option. You get those students to hit that refresh button. What the refresh button does, it remembers what the students struggled with chapter to chapter to chapter as the semester goes along. So you assign a refresh every other week. And what it will do is bring up what they've done in the past. Bring it up, bring it up, bring it up. The system will bring it up. And it helps combat that decay of knowledge that we know happens, that we see happening. Gosh, they come back to us after Christmas, and it's like they have the duz, and we never taught them anything. Do the refresh. Have the students do it. It is the best way to keep that knowledge fresh and on the forefront of their brain. Top 4. I do have a list, though, that I've given Melanie of like top 10 things to do in your classroom and how to use the technology. I don't want to take up more of our time, though, because I wanted to have some questions if you had any questions for me. And let me apologize in advance. I hope it's not my connection, but I was just unable to get back into the Connect. Melanie?
Yes, Ashley.
I'm pretty good, and I would love to be able to take some questions if I can. And I've stopped showing my screen. I was just not able to get back into the Connect. I'm so sorry.
No problem. That is what happens sometimes with technology, but thank you so much for sharing your tips with us.
Yeah.
So looking through the questions, can you clarify again where to find the metacognitive reports? Now these are all within the LearnSmart platform.
They are. And you go into reports, literally. I wish I could find this. I'm not able to show it on my screen, but it is, and Melanie, you may have to kick in here with the Connect Ed, but there should be a reports tab.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then you can just look up metacognitive reports, and it tells you each student where they are with that, where they're learning. And you watch it. You go look at your students. I'll bet you that for the majority, the girls land in the middle and the boys land on the outsides. It's crazy. And that is also where you're going to find your 5 objectives that they're commonly missing.
Great. We do have another question.
Yes.
How do you handle students who don't or won't do the assignments? What are your tips there?
Yeah, well, we have that problem no matter what level we teach. Let me say a couple things about that. Number one, motivation comes from within. Motivation is the hardest thing for us to affect as teachers, for sure. The game-like platform really for the Learn Smart really does incentivize the learning for the students. Plus the fact is it takes away the guesswork of what am I supposed to do today? And so students find that structure comforting. Even though they will resist you in the beginning and go, oh my gosh, she's giving us homework 3 days a week. Yes, you're getting it 3 days a week because that's how we learn. You don't learn crammed up one night beforehand. That is part of our job. And so, believe it or not, now the students will remind me, they'll say, hey, wait a minute, it's not opening. And I'll be like, okay, thanks for reminding me. Because we all like the structure, and our students desperately need it. Another tip, don't ever make this optional. I cannot emphasize that to you enough. You need to have this thing required. It has to be required. Listen, if you make it bonus or something, who's going to do it? The A students. And they're going to do it no matter what. But the power of this software, even though the A students will benefit, it will really benefit your C and D and B students. What you'll see as you go further through and you want to investigate further the data, those students actually jump up in their rankings. The people it doesn't benefit are the people who refuse to do anything. The F students usually stay F.
Great, thank you.
Any
now
other
we do
questions?
Oh yes, so we have had some questions about how to gain access to Learn Smart. We do recommend that you sign up for a free trial. So we did have some technical difficulties today, so a free trial of the program would be a great way for you to play around the program. Would you agree, Ashley?
Absolutely, 100%. 100%. And if while you're playing around, it is kind of nice to be able to talk with somebody who's been using it. And McGraw-Hill is amazing about setting you up with buddies. And so don't hesitate to ask, because there's a lot of us out there that have a lot of experience with the program, and we are more than willing to be your buddy and to be there for you.
Absolutely. Now, to get to the free trial, which you're probably wondering now, you can go to mcgraw-hill.com and search for Learn Smart, and there will be a link there that says Test Drive Learn Smart. So it's very easy to find, easy to locate. Now, does anyone else have any other questions for Ashley? Let's take a look here. Well, we want to thank you again. Oh, it looks like we do have a question coming in.
Great.
So let's see, a question for Gregory. Gregory, let's see here. Okay, so we do have another question.
Yep.
The question is, are you finding reading levels are lower now than in the past?
Yes. I have to say, honestly, around 60 to 65% of the students that come to community college nationwide have to go through remedial English and remedial math. That's not good news. We know that, but that is reality. So 60 to 65% of the students that come to us in community college nationwide are not able to read on grade level or be able to essentially get through algebra. Yes.
Okay.
So we do have that problem.
All right. All right, I think we're going to end the webinar here. We want to thank you again, Ashley, for your participation and sharing your experiences and tips with us.
Sure.
And we want to thank all of you for attending our webinar today. We will be sending a follow-up email with a link to this recording. And as you exit the webinar, there will be a survey that will open up, and we would greatly appreciate your feedback to help us improve and plan our future webinars. And if we did not get to your question today, we are happy to follow up with you individually. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much, Melanie, and thank all of you for coming.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.